So I have a theory about dynamic range, and in order to express it, I need to tell you a quick story. There's this book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, and the book has 2 chapters about people with really high IQs. If you're not familiar with IQ scores, an IQ of 100 is typically considered normal, average. An IQ of 130 is gifted. These 2 chapters talk about a study that was done in the early 20th century by a Stanford psychology professor who dealt with high IQs. And his theory was the higher the IQ, the better a predictor of success that would be. So this professor from Stanford decided he was going to do a big experiment, and he rounded up all of the brightest, smartest children he could find, kids with super high IQs. And his theory was these kids would be the future leaders of this generation. They would be Nobel Peace Prize winners, presidents, business leaders, famous artists, all because they had really high IQs. And he tracked these kids throughout their lives. This was incorrect. His theory failed. But why did his theory fail? Well, years later, other scientists took his findings and did their own research. And what they found was something interesting, something they would call a threshold effect. And what it meant was, after a certain point, IQ no longer mattered. And what they meant by that was, after a certain point, it was no longer a predictor of success. They deemed that point to be an IQ of 120. Somebody with an IQ of 125 had just as much success as somebody with an IQ of 185, perhaps. I think dynamic range is important. We all want the ability to maintain information in our shadows and in our highlights, and we do want that cinematic, high dynamic range image, especially on a day like this when there's sun and you're in the woods. But are we placing too much emphasis on it? Are we foregoing certain cameras just because they can't shoot 16 plus stops of dynamic range? Where is the line? What do you think? How many stops of dynamic range is enough? Is it 12 stops? 13 stops? 14? Do you agree with this? Where do you stand on dynamic range?